Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Friday Reads video for September 6th, 2019. Things aren't going as quickly in the reading world for me as I'd like this week, and I have a bunch of excuses, some better than others. I dropped my iPod the other day, which was especially embarrassing because I only got it about a week and a half ago. I held it up on another recent video. Anyway, when I dropped it, it fizzled out and the screen died, and ultimately what happened is I got lucky and I think the battery drained and then the blue screen turned to black and I was able to plug it in and it restarted and everything's okay again. But one of those bad ways of spending time is partially doing research and partially freaking out about it rather than, taking the time on my metro ride to work to read my book. But luckily that's all behind us now. But rather than ramble into that, I'll talk about the one book I finished since last time. This is The Leavers by Lisa Ko. This is a book that I got signed at the 2017 National Book Festival. I recently did a vlog style video for the 2019 National Book Festival, which I'll link down below. Anyway, this one is about a young boy named Deming who his mother abandons him. She's an undocumented immigrant, and he ends up in foster care and ultimately adopted by a white couple. And we kind of go back and forth. A lot of it's about his identity issues, about who he is. I mean, there's a literal changing of his name. Some of it is rather just standard American teen stuff about trying to define who you are in opposition to your parents, or, as an individual rather than what they want. But then there's this other stuff too about being abandoned and what comes from that, and all of the ethnic identity issues, because he's one of the only minority kids in his suburb. And we also follow his birth mother, Polly, and we see what becomes of her. Suffice to say that there's a lot in this story about the real trauma that undocumented immigrants can face in the U.S. I thought that both of the characters were really well drawn, complicated people, which made Daniels, or Demings' adoptive parents, all the more disappointing, really, for how shallow they were in terms of their characterization. Anyway, I will talk about this more. I talked about it more in my Goodreads review, which I included in my August 2019 literary newsletter. I have snippets from all of the Goodreads reviews of the books that I read or started during August in there, as well as a book pick and a book meme and a TBR and all that good stuff, news that stood out to me. So I will link that down below. This is the next book that I held up in my last Friday Reads video. It is Peony by Pearl S. Buck. This is a novel that takes place in mid-19th century China. It's actually about a Jewish family in Kaifeng during the time when Jews in Kaifeng were sort of starting to, well, die out is not really the right term, but they started to fully assimilate into Chinese life. There was a large contingent of Jews of China who mostly came from, I guess, South Asia and the Middle East, and ended up through trade routes in China for hundreds of years as a community, but they assimilated so much into this culture that is known to be so friendly that there really is no more community anymore of Jews who identify as such in that area. And this is following a specific family. I have mixed feelings about it. Buck's writing is really overly purple to my mind. Also, you can tell that she is the daughter of missionaries, and the way that she describes Judaism really has a very Christian tint to it. It doesn't seem all that familiar to me personally, like calling the rabbi Father and God Jehovah. I don't know. And it makes me think a bit about how she's portraying Chinese culture as well, and if she's seeing it through some biases. So it's kind of making me more curious to read more nonfiction about China during this time. Most of the characters are really overly dramatic, but I suppose compelling in a soap opera way. Right now what's happening is that the young master of the house is about to get engaged to a Jewish woman of the community. It's all part of a, we want to keep our community thriving as much as we can, but the novel's told from the perspective of Peony, who is a Chinese bondmaid, which is basically a slave or an indentured servant. And she's probably the most interesting character because she's the most conniving, because she has this major crush on the young master David and is trying to find a way to stay within his affections, as it were. She's sort of playing her own games about who she wants to see as the mistress of the house and what have you, and about making David more Chinese, as it were. And because of this whole bondmaid slavery thing, you almost have to feel for her a little bit because she has so few choices in life. Why not take what she can to get what she wants? Of course, I have my own feelings, being Jewish, about witnessing basically the assimilation of the community in China. But I don't know. I mean, I'm finding it to be a compelling read in that soap opera way, but not as deep as I was hoping. I might be more critical of this book than I usually am with books on Goodreads. Who knows? I guess we'll see when I finally finish it. Hopefully sometime soon. Here's a book I've started but haven't gotten very far with. I think I'm putting it aside for now. This is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I'm not putting it aside because I dislike the story. In fact, I've read 2 chapters and I fell into it pretty quickly. I remember reading sample chapters somewhere, I think on this channel, once upon a time, and I wasn't as invested, but I fell much more into it this time. This is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling with a Jewish tint. The reason I'm putting it aside is because I'm also listening to a fantasy book on audiobook right now. It is The Raven Tower by Leckie. And I just figured I didn't want to have 2 fantasy stories going at once and getting things confused, so I'm just going to put this on the back burner until I get some other books off my docket. I'm also reading this as part of a personal project. September is known in some quarters as Sci-Fi September, and I use it to read and review Jewish SFF. And so this year I'm focusing on what I'm calling fairy tale retellings, although this one is most officially a fairy tale retelling of the 3 books I chose. But I will talk about the rest as I get to them. For now, I'm just hoping to get to this one soon. Oh man, it's a chunker, so it's longer than I thought it would be, but I'm hoping it'll remain engaging. Speaking of the science fiction aspect to Sci-Fi September, I wanted to hold up this book as well. This is Atlas Alone by Emma Newman. It is the 4th and maybe final book, I'm not sure, of her Planetfall series. It came out earlier this year. Usually I've been waiting for these books to come onto audio on my library overdrive, but I didn't want to wait that long this year because I wanted to consider this for next year's BookTube SFF prize, and plus I do really love the series. This is a standalone novel, though technically it is related to the other novels, particularly to After Atlas. Suffice to say, I think a quick summary I can give is that we're following Dee, who is living on a generation ship of sorts, and she is invited to play a video game that seems to co-align with real events that are happening. Like if she kills people in the game, they die in real life or something like that. I think there's going to be a big mystery component to this. That's a big thing in all of Newman's novels that of the Planetfall series anyway, that I've read. I'm really excited for this one. Before Mars, the last book, was a little bit of a hiccup for me. I liked it a whole lot, but I didn't love it as much as I loved Planetfall and After Atlas. I'm hoping this will be a return to form because it hews most closely to the action in After Atlas, I believe. I'm also really hoping maybe it teases a bit about connecting this story more fully to Planetfall, or maybe Newman will write more books. I might like that, especially if it's in the Planetfall direction. Planetfall takes place on an entirely different planet, far, far away, whereas most of the rest of the books are Mars and Earth and so forth. But anyway, I'm excited to get to this whenever I get to this. So that about covers it for me now. I feel sort of bad holding up so many books that I've barely gotten started in, or who knows when I'll even get to them, because I'll have these thumbnails with things I may or may not read in the near future. I want to keep myself on a schedule, but I have some other things going on in my life too, so I'm trying to do a balancing act. I know the weekend is coming up, but I will probably have some plans that'll take up a fair bit of time, but I'm really going to try to get in substantial reading around it. I guess we'll see how it goes. In the meantime, I hope you all are enjoying the start to this fresh new month. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.